Alrighty, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of In Depth with David. And it's another episode where I'm in a completely different setup. There's some renovations going on around my house, all that fun stuff. So, nonetheless, we're still consistently with the same partner here. I'm with my good friend Ricky. Ricky, how are you doing today?
All right, back in a normal setup for now, so that's good.
What were your initial takeaways from this 4-game series against the Seattle Mariners? Before we get into it, I mean, if you didn't tell by the title to all the viewers, the Red Sox just today finished up a 4-game set against Seattle. Once again, we won't bury the lead. I don't want to anger any of our viewers, but without going into specifics yet, what are your basic takeaways of these last 4 games between the Sox and Seattle?
Again, without burying the lead, I think there were some positives and some negatives. I don't really want to get too specific because I think we could touch upon some of them, but I guess pitching will definitely be something we'll discuss. Starters on both teams and how they fared. Some specific relievers we'll talk about. Some we've talked about before, some maybe not. And some defensive errors, you could say, in Game 3 that I think we should definitely touch upon. But yeah, there were quite a few negatives this series. But yeah, I'm not going to obviously reveal the result. If you've seen the series, if you've watched the games, watched the highlights, you know how the Sox made out. But we'll get into that. But yeah, really just some positives, some decent hitting, decent performances from certain Sox on the offensive and defensive ends of things, and then some really bad stuff too. So yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I'll just say before we get into it, if I had to describe this series in one word, it'd be disappointing. And people are going to say that's spoiling it. But again, we haven't revealed the results of any of the games. But If you ask me, I thought it was pretty underwhelming. But nonetheless, we'll get into Game 1 here. So Game 1 between the Sox and Seattle, the pitching matchup is Nick Pivetta versus Justin Dunn. Don't know too much about Dunn, but I believe he's a young pitching prospect for Seattle and part of the future there most likely. So in the first inning, Alex Verdugo starts off with making a nice sliding catch to retire Ty France. We touched upon this pretty much in every other podcast, but this has got to be really valuable to not only us fans, but also Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox organization, that they have someone as versatile as Verdugo that can play all the outfield positions and play all of them at a high level. Because we saw in the Minnesota series, he made that nice diving catch to win Game 1 of that doubleheader. He starts off this game with a nice sliding catch to rob Ty France. So just good things to see from him, because the Red Sox obviously brought in a lot of versatile people this offseason who can play multiple positions, like Kike Hernandez, Mauro Gonzalez. Now we see Verdugo. He can master all 3 spots in the outfield. It's just good to see. But moving forward in the second inning, Rafael Devers continues on a torrid streak of just hitting the snot. I'm not going to swear, hitting the snot out of the ball. And he homers over the Red Sox bullpen, makes it 1-0 Boston. And then if we jump ahead a bit into the fourth inning, Hunter Renfroe hits an RBI single to bring in Devers to make it 2-0 Red Sox. And this is where things get a little bit chaotic. So we head into the sixth, and Nick Pivetta, surprisingly, has a no-hitter heading into this inning. And after walking J.P. Crawford and Ryan Haniger on the Mariners, Pivetta gives up the game-tying double to the man we just mentioned, Ty France.
Right.
Do you want to talk about Franchy Cordero on this play? Because I don't know if you noticed this from looking at the highlights, but he kind of played this, in my opinion, a little bit poorly, this fly ball. I feel like if he wasn't as shallow in the outfield, he could have made a play on it. What are your thoughts on how Franchy was
pretty much
that play?
As you said, with the shallowness of it, he just did not look prepared. I took some notes on Franchy behind the plate and defensively, so we can talk more about him later on as the series progresses. But yeah, this was one of many disappointing kind of aspects of Franchy's game in this 4-game set. So we'll touch upon more of those as they come up. But yeah, he didn't look prepared for that, and he could have made the play there, and it's disappointing. But yeah,
I don't understand why he was playing that shallow, because I think there was only one out. It's not like a all or nothing play. Like when players play shallow, it's usually like bases loaded or two people in scoring position, and you want to be closer to the infield so you can get the ball in quickly to try and get it out at home. I don't really get what Franchi was thinking there. Maybe it was just like a mental error, which is perfectly fine. Like that happens to the best of them. But I think we're both in agreement that he played that poorly. So because of his error, I mean, not a physical error, but because of his mental error, Pavetta's no-hitter is over. Mariners end up tying it on a 2-run double by Ty France, who I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then in the bottom of the 7th inning, Kike Hernandez gets a rare triple off the Green Monster. Like that never really happens at Fenway. Like if you hit a triple, it's usually in the right field corner where it is able to roll around a bit, or maybe even in the triangle in deep center. But I was shocked. Like when I saw that happen live, I'm like, there's no way he's getting a triple out of this off the Green Monster. That never happens. But nonetheless, he ends up on third. And then 2 batters later, a wild pitch from the Mariners pitcher Sadler brings in Kike to make it 3-2. And then we're going to bring up our favorite player, Adam Ottavino. Do you want to talk about his eventful 8th inning here of relief? The Red Sox come into this inning with a 3-2 lead, but why don't you take it from here about how our best buddy Adam does?
Yeah, that was something I noted actually, was to touch upon Ottavino's struggles. We've if you haven't been following this podcast, this is your first time watching, or you're just watching it now or whatever, or in playback. In a lot of these recaps, we've been talking about Adam Ottavino, coming in as the potential closer and now kind of surrendering that role to Matt Barnes from what it looks like. I even read an article earlier saying he gave Matt Barnes the blessing to be the team's closer. And this 8th inning definitely showed that. Ottavino has consistently struggled. He's shown games where he's been dominant, and he's shown games where he's struggled. Obviously, the Minnesota game will always touch back upon that because that was the first disappointment. And this, again, was another disappointment. Ottavino let runners in, and the game got blown open. And at that point, it was over, unfortunately. So.
What do you think about his decision there when J.P. Crawford laid down that bunt? He could have easily taken the throw or thrown the ball to first and made it 1 out with 2nd and 3rd, but he probably got a little too greedy and tried to nab whoever it was at 3rd, but he ended up throwing it in the left field. Do you think that was an unnecessary gamble, or do you think we, as weird as this sounds, should try and defend Ottavino and say that wasn't a bad decision? I mean, he ended up throwing the ball in the left field and the run was able to score, but maybe you can make the argument that if it was an accurate throw, then we could have had a chance at 3rd for an out. But do you think that was a good decision by him, even though it didn't turn out well?
I get why he did it, but personally, I would have thrown to first. I would have played it more safe and gotten the easier out in that case. And even if the runner were to come in, I believe the game would have tied 3-3. So
right, yeah. Because maybe we go to 3rd if we're down 1 instead of being up 1. It's not all hands on deck when you have a lead. Like,
right.
Get any outs you can get. Mm-hmm. I would have gone to 3rd, but he thought he had, or first, but I guess he thought he had to play at 3rd, and obviously it was a disaster. And the ball got thrown in the left, and the runner scores, so it's 3-3. And then we head into extras, and in the 10th inning, Haggerty gets an RBI double off Darwinson Hernandez to score Evan White, who was on 2nd, and he moved up to 3rd because one of the batters, I forget who it was, laid down a sacrifice bunt to move him up. This just goes back to my whole thing where I don't hate the new extra innings rule. We talked about it in the first podcast we did where a runner automatically starts on 2nd, but you kind of have to offset that for the pitchers. And I'm not just saying this because the Red Sox got screwed by this, because spoiler alert, this game did not go how they wanted it to go. We'll get into more detail in a second. But I feel like you need to offset the whole start on runner on 2nd with maybe starting with 1 out in the inning, because all the pressure is on the pitcher if they have runner on 2nd with 0 outs. And all the offense has to do is get 1 hit, and they have 3 tries to do it. But if you start runner on 2nd with 1 out, and I believe I said this in the first podcast, then it kind of balances the pressure between the offense and the defense. So I don't know how you feel about that, or if your feelings have changed on it, but I feel like there's still a little tinkering to do with this extra inning rule. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Pretty much the same as you. I think I definitely think since then, there could be some tinkering done. So
Yeah, and I mean, granted, do I have faith in Darwinson Hernandez all the time? No, and he did burn us there because he gave up the eventual lead. But I just think you have to do something so it's not completely overpowering the offense in these extra inning situations. But it's a good rule. I like it for the most part. So then, yeah, going back to the double, this is also another thing with Franchi Cordero. He kind of misplayed this one. I don't know if there was a shift because keep in mind, everyone watching, we both don't have time to watch all the games. So we look at the highlights to get the synopsis of what happened. But it looked like in this play, Cordero was playing a little bit too far over to the right side of left field when this ball was hit. And I feel like he may have been able to get the catch if he was in his regular position. Nonetheless, the ball goes down past Cordero, makes it 4-3 Seattle. Then the very next batter, Renfroe makes a nice leaping catch against the wall and right, but it ends up meaning nothing because with 2 outs in the 10th, the Red Sox were 1 strike away from getting out of the inning, being down 1. But Haniger hits a 3-run homer off Hernandez to take the Sox bullpen pitcher deep, puts this game away 7-3. Basically, with that one swing of the bat, the game is over. The Red Sox weren't going to come back from a 4-run deficit. So Seattle goes on to win the first game of the series. And I don't know if you knew this, but this was actually the first game all year where the Sox blew a lead. So it took until April 22nd for the Sox to blow a lead in the season, which I think is impressive.
Yeah, that's surprising, honestly. I because they lost in extra innings, it just didn't really cross my mind at that as a specific step. But yeah, I mean, that is pretty impressive. I mean, it's disappointing it was an extra innings loss, obviously, and there were a decent amount of struggles throughout the game. But yeah, that is impressive considering
almost a whole month into the year.
They've either came back or held leads, and that's solid. So,
do you think Cordero's defense is going to be an issue moving forward? Because in these first couple podcasts, I was a big cheerleader for Franchi, both at the plate and in the field. I kept on saying, I think he's doing a great job defending the monster, which is a very hard task to do. But this game, he really kind of cost us 3 runs. And really, I don't want to say he blew it for us, but if he plays those balls a little bit differently or makes better judgments, the Red Sox probably win this game because it was a winnable game for sure. But do you think Cordero's defense moving forward could be a liability for the Red Sox?
I actually think Franchi's offense and defense could be a liability, honestly. I don't know if I've mentioned this in past podcasts, but I don't really like Franchi's the way he'll swing at really horrible pitches. I feel like he just swings at almost everything, and I don't typically worry about a lot of the Sox when I see them at the plate because I think most of them can even hang in there. Even guys like Dahlback that are late in the rotation, but for whatever reason, every time I see Franchi step up to the plate as of late, I just expect a strikeout or him just to maybe get a walk. But it is disappointing seeing his batting average too. It was above 300. I think it was about 306 a few series ago, and it's dipped down considerably, almost to the high 100s. And his defense too, like you talked about, and like we talked about in that Rays series, he did an impressive job in outfield, defending the monster. But yeah, this game, I'm a little concerned because, as you said too, he pretty much gave up 3 runs this game, and that cost the Sox big time. They, like you said too, this could have been a winnable game. I really want Franchi to be a solid, acquisition and really get better. And I was actually rather impressed too. A few series into the season when he was hitting well and playing good outfielding, but it is definitely starting to worry me. And at least behind the plate, I almost see him as a liability now. I think we'll have to just give him a little more, like always, but it is a little bit concerning. I'm not going to lie, personally.
Right, and you talking about him on the plate too actually reminded me of a stat I read yesterday in an article where heading into today, I believe, he had 42 at-bats and he struck out 21 times. So 50% of the time he goes up to the plate, he's striking out. He's just swinging at anything. So I'm in agreement with you. That's a little concerning. That trade's been really weird, the whole Benintendi trade, because Benintendi, just touching on this for a second, hasn't really been doing too much for Kansas City this year. And Cordero's kind of doing the same for us besides that hot start. So we'll see how that turns out. But heading into game 2 of the series, the pitching matchup is Martin Perez versus Kikuchi. Let me get his first name here. Yuzie Kikuchi. My apologies if I mispronounced that. And once again, the Red Sox pitching in this game gets off to a slow start. Haniger gets a leadoff double, and then 2 batters later, Kyle Seager, who had a big series, we'll talk about him more as we get later into this whole 4-game set, drives in Haniger with the wall ball double to make it 1-0 Seattle in the first, and then Bogaerts is able to help Perez get out of a jam here with a nice sliding double play. And then the bottom of the first, we're going to talk about Xander here a little bit again. He homers once again over the monster. It's a 2-run shot, which it also scored Alex Verdugo, who got on base earlier in the inning. So it's 2-1 Red Sox. And then Haggerty makes a nice catch on Rafael Devers' line out in left field to end the inning. Moving forward to the third, JD Martinez. We've been seeing a lot of these homers this last few games at Fenway where they're hitting these weird homers that either wrap around the pesky pole or just barely get out in right field. It's really weird, but that's just one of the quirks about Fenway, where it's a hitter's park where you can either hit it over the monster in left field, or so many people hit it off the monster, and in so many other parks it would have been a homer. But just another one of those quirks at Fenway. So JD capitalizes on the short right field wall to make it 3-1 Red Sox in the third. And in the fourth, Martin Perez walks the number 7 and number 8 Seattle hitters Dylan Moore and Haggerty. And J.P. Crawford drives in Dylan with an RBI single to make it 3-2 Red Sox. And then Sawamura comes in and gives a great 1 1/3 innings of relief. I just think Sawamura has been really good this year. I think he had one bad outing in Minnesota, I want to say. But other than that, I feel like that was another sneaky good addition by Chaim Bloom this offseason.
I like him too, actually. He's been one of my favorites out of that pen. I've definitely – I don't feel super nervous per se when I see him come up to the plate, because I think, like he did in this game, a really solid job. And, yeah, since that Minnesota, I believe, game, he's been pretty solid. I like him a lot. So.
And then we headed to the top of the fifth, and Alex Verdugo once again makes another nice defensive play where the ball went off the wall and he nags Haniger, I believe, or Seager trying to go to third on the hit, but he plays the ball nice off the wall and throws it right into third to get a nice out. So heading into the bottom of the fifth, bases loaded, and JD Martinez has an opportunity to really blow this game open. We're only up by 1 at this point still. It's still 3-2 Boston. He unfortunately does ground into a double play, but the run scores to make it 4-2. And then Bogaerts with 2 outs continues the fun in the inning, or the hashtag fun, I should say, with the 2-out single to bring in Kike Hernandez, making it 5-2. And then Garrett Whitlock just continues his hot start to the year, comes out of the bullpen, gives 2 1/3 innings of relief, gives up no runs. And the bottom of the seventh, Verdugo and JD hit back-to-back singles. Bogaerts gets another nice hit. He hits one right into right field to score Verdugo to make it 6-2. And then for the second straight night, Ottavino makes an appearance. And you want to talk about how this appearance went for Ottavino in game 2?
If I remember correctly, I think it went a little bit better, right?
Yeah, a little bit better is actually a really good phrase to describe it, because he did give up a double, but he was able to shake it off and nothing ended up happening. So nonetheless, Ottavino redeems himself. He did the same exact thing in his first appearance after the torrid Minnesota game. And after that, first and second with 1 out, or sorry, I'm jumping ahead a bit. So in the 9th inning, Matt Barnes comes in, and Matt Barnes in this inning kind of proves he's immortal. So if you want, do you want to talk about how Matt Barnes did in this 9th inning?
Yeah, Matt Barnes did excellent. Like I said earlier, with Ottavino giving Barnes the blessing to be the closer, Matt Barnes really showed out again in this game. Excellent 9th inning.
Oh, no, so this was the game where Matt Barnes struggled, if you want to talk about that one. You're good.
Yeah, no. I was thinking of today.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Spoiler alert. Sorry to bury the lead, but right. Yeah, no. Yeah, Barnes struggled today. Oh my God, he struggled
Friday,
and did better today. Yeah, Matt Barnes. Okay, I'm trying to remember back to this inning.
So this was probably his worst outing of the year. I would say he's obviously at the beginning of the year, he was just lights out. And he's had a few innings of relief here and there where he's given up hits and whatever and a run or whatever. But it's 6-2 heading into the ninth. And this gets really scary here with Matt Barnes coming in. So he basically gives up back-to-back singles. I don't even know if it was back-to-back singles, but it's first and second with one out. And then Kyle Seager just takes him deep into the right field seats. So it goes from a 6-2 game to a 6-5 game. Just not a good inning of relief from Barnes. He left that one hanging for Seager to hit, and he took him way deep into the seats, as I said.
Right.
But nonetheless, Matt Barnes does close it out, and we do win 6-5. But nonetheless, he kind of scared us there at the end. But the Sox are able to even up the series, so it's 1-1 after 2 games. And then we head into game 3. So game 3 is Nathan Eovaldi versus the pitcher for the Mariners, Flexen. Let me get his first name here. Chris Flexen. Do you kind of just want to talk about this game a little bit? You can talk about how the pitching matchup went or just, take us through all the events that happened. I'll let you take it from here for a little bit.
So in short, I think Flexen had a really solid start. He was lights out, honestly. He really did an excellent job striking out the Sox. I believe he went 7 innings or 6 innings, something like that. He went pretty far into the game. He helped Seattle out a lot. He struck out a lot of Sox, and he made it really difficult for the Red Sox to get anything going. And this was definitely, again, I'd say probably one of their worst losses this year, in my opinion, so far. And I think Flexen was partially to blame for that. I genuinely think, despite not being a guy that I've heard as being an ace, he was one of the best pitching matchups I've seen against the Sox. And the Mariners also did a really good job against Eovaldi, who so far has been our guy, our ace, although Erod, we'll talk about him today and how he's been doing as well. But Eovaldi's been pretty solid thus far. We praised him in the last podcast in that Blue Jays split. And I think, thus far he's been really good, but he really struggled in this game. Giving up runs and struggling with strikeouts, and he didn't look horrible, but he also didn't give the Sox the best outing he possibly could. And I also think the relievers played a role in this loss as well, as they gave up multiple runs and well. I think the Mariners' offense was just playing really hot yesterday, and that resulted in, like I said, in my opinion, one of their worst losses. And the Sox offense, which we can touch on too, was also pretty cooled off. They didn't do a whole lot. They didn't really get any rallies going or have any, big moments. Obviously, they scored a handful of runs, 2 runs, but it wasn't like a game where they were in it. There was no point, at least to me, where I don't know about you, but I was out and about yesterday and I watched this game while I was in a restaurant and all over the place, but checking my phone, and I just watched the highlights too, and I was like, yeah, there was no point where I really felt like the Sox were in the game. I just watched the lead go and go and go, and I was in that restaurant, and I was like, wow, this is not good. So I don't know how you felt about it, but at least for me, it was kind of a tough game to watch, honestly.
Yeah, I'm glad I was working during this game yesterday, just to save myself from the misery. This game was pretty much over by the 5th inning. Eovaldi, he didn't pitch bad, but he didn't pitch great. Went 5 innings, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. But once again, the Red Sox in this series and the season get off to a slow start. Is in the 1st inning, Ty France scores on an RBI double from Kyle Seager, or an RBI single from Kyle Seager. And then in the 2nd inning, this is kind of where Seattle blew it open for good with, 1st and 3rd. Kyle Seager lifts one towards the triangle in center. Verdugo backtracks, but he can't get to it. So Seager gets a triple, and Haggerty and France were able to score to make it 3-0. And then Eovaldi later in the inning throws a wild pitch. This scores Seager from 3rd to make it 4-0. And then in the 5th, Seager hits another one to deep center, and he gets a double this time. But already in the 5th inning, he's a home run away from the cycle, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And this speaks to how dominant he was this series. And then he scores after Bogarts can't corral the ball. It took a little bit of a weird hop. That's just kind of the luck the Red Sox had in this game, because I can't remember if they ruled it an error or not, but it was just a weird ball for Bogarts to handle. It hit like a weird dirt or grass patch or whatever. So Sox can't do anything about that. And Flexen, as you said, just really had a great day of throwing the ball, tossing the rock around. 7 innings, only gave up 1 run because in the bottom of the 7th, Rafael Devers had a wall ball double, and Marwin Gonzalez was able to score him with an RBI single, but that only made it 5-1. And then in the 8th, Haggerty takes one of our other favorite relievers, Josh Taylor, deep to make it 6-1. And then Felipe Valdez in the 9th gives up RBI singles to both Evan White and Haggerty to just add on to the drubbing of the Sox. This makes it 8-2 at this point. Or sorry, 8-1. And then in the 9th, Devers does get an RBI double off the Green Monster, bring in Alex Verdugo, but the Sox nonetheless still get crushed in this game 8-2, and the Mariners take the 2-1 lead in this 4-game set. So I think we both talked about this, how it's encouraging how we can be confident whenever the Red Sox fall behind early in a game, 1-0 or 2-0, that they can come back. But this game kind of just exposed all the weaknesses, in my opinion, in the Red Sox this season. And I feel like this could become a snowball effect if we really don't patch up this stuff quickly, where the Red Sox get down early, whatever it is, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, and they can't get anything going against a pitcher who's rolling. So their offense is stagnant. And then to make matters worse, later in the game, the relievers come in and they don't help anything, and they also just suck against the hitters, and they add on to the opponent's lead. So these types of games just really prove that the Red Sox, in my opinion, even though we've gone off to a hot start, we're not World Series contenders, and we have a lot of holes, because this game was just, as you said, I would say this is probably the second worst loss of the season, behind the Easter Sunday loss to the Orioles.
Yeah, that was humiliating.
Yeah, I hate bringing that one up too.
Yeah, it was horrible.
But this game just really showed that we have a lot of holes in our team, and we just can't play from behind all the time.
Right. Yeah, as you talked about too, the defensive efforts as well. There were a lot of, just in watching the highlights and watching portions of the game while I was eating, it was just embarrassing. Just some of the outfielding mistakes, the infielding mistakes, they just didn't look like they were all there. On the offensive and defensive efforts, it was just a really, really tough game. So obviously today's game went differently, and we can talk about that. But yeah, I'm glad this game was behind us. And like you said too, with that snowball effect, that's definitely something that was kind of crossing my mind too. That was a little bit worrisome. So let's hope that doesn't continue to happen, but that might become an issue, especially as we play really solid teams in a couple weeks, another stretch of really good teams. So,
right. I mean, the fact of the matter is our starting pitching is doing solid, but we've had bad games. I mean, I'm looking at you, Garrett Richards, Evaldi today didn't do too well. And then our relievers, it's just our pitching as a whole isn't strong, but we're playing really well right now. But you don't know how this pitching is going to be heading into May, heading into June. And then once you get behind these teams, like I believe more than half of our victories this season are come from behind victories, which is impressive. I feel like every game besides this one and the Orioles one, we've had a chance to win, regardless of whether we won or lost. We've always kept it close with our opponents, but this is not a winning formula for the Sox this year. We're going to get completely crushed if we keep playing from behind, because as we saw against Kopech, as we saw against John Means, I believe that's his name in the Orioles, and as we saw against Flexen yesterday, this is just not a winning formula when you go up against great pitchers. Like, we're not going to be able to do this when we face Garrett Cole or whoever else we have to face. I mean, it's just not going to work.
DeGrom in this next series, I mean, that's going to be a tough matchup too.
Right. And who was that pitcher, the Blue Jays that we faced?
Ryu.
Or so we got, I forget who we were facing, but
him, but
right. It's weird because we do great off aces like Rio and Giolito on the White Sox. I mean, we ran him out of the ballpark.
Too, on the Twins. They played pretty well against him as well.
Right. So all we need is some consistency. But again, we'll see what happens. So now we're going to head into the final game of the series. Game 4 happened earlier today at 1 o'clock. It was a Sunday afternoon game. Always love those. And the pitching matchup was Eduardo Rodriguez versus Margevicius for the Seattle Mariners. And how do you think Eduardo Rodriguez pitched today?
I thought Erod had a great game. I believe he had a 10-pitch inning.
I think he might have at one point. I feel like in one of the earlier innings, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I remember hearing that because I was actually getting vaccinated during this game. So I watched the highlights and watched little parts of it. But Erod had 8 strikeouts, I have down. He pitched 7 innings, and I believe his ERA was 3.
So, yes, 7 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, and 8 strikeouts. So not his best stuff, but good enough. And I don't know if you've seen the stat, but the Red Sox are 38-2 going back to 2017 when they give Erod more than 4 runs of run support. So I don't know what it is whenever Erod goes on the mound, but the Sox consistently just are able to give him runs, which is nice. Nonetheless, to begin this game, for the third time this series, the Red Sox fall behind in the first inning or very early in the game as Erod gives up back-to-back doubles to literally the same spot to Hanover and Ty France to make it 1-0. What are your thoughts also on JD Martinez? We're playing him a little bit in left field every now and then. Is that something you like, or would you rather keep him at DH as much as possible, which I know the Red Sox are going to do that, but we like to throw him in the outfield to give some other people days off.
I don't mind it. I think for that reason exactly. And I know when he was in Arizona, he played outfield mostly, from what I remember. So I like that. Him being out there as a potential like rest for other guys, but I'd prefer him as a DH personally. But
me too.
He's not the fastest, so it's kind of tough when you have to make diving catches or go deep. But it's fine. I mean, today it didn't really matter much because the Sox offense really helped.
Spoiler alert!
Sorry.
We buried the lead all the time. Who cares?
For what happened, though, the result. But they did well without giving the result. But
right.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to be a little harsh on JD here because I love the guy. He's one of the better Red Sox free agent signings under the Henry ownership. I could go on and on about how much I hate the Dice K contract, the Pablo Sandoval contract, the Price contract. But JD today playing in left field, he was running around out there like he was in quicksand or something. Like, good God, like him jogging after those 2 balls, those 2 doubles in the first, like that was just so hard to watch. I don't think he's definitely not the outfielder he once was because, again, we're putting him at DH more primarily. So he's probably not spending too much time in the field anymore, practicing catch and fly balls or whatever. But he looked like me running out there in left field pretty much. So hopefully we don't have to do that too much. I believe we're going to have to probably throw him out there in the interleague games because I don't think the interleague is doing or the National League. I think they're having the pitchers still hit. So we'll probably have to throw him out there since there won't be a DH in those games. But nonetheless, Red Sox go down 1-0. And then the bottom of the first, Kike Hernandez singles, and then I'll just call him M because I don't want to keep mispronouncing his name, the Seattle pitcher, or I'll just call him Margay, I'll just say his name fully, whatever. So Margevicius gives up back-to-back walks to Devers and JD Martinez after walking Kike Hernandez. Or after giving up a single to Kike to make it bases loaded for Boston in the bottom of the first. And then Christian Vasquez, who's kind of been quiet lately. Obviously, he got off to a bit of a hot start, but in this at-bat, he gets an RBI single to bring in Kike Hernandez to make it 1-1. And then back-to-back walks to Renfroe and Marwin Gonzalez force in Rafael Devers and JD Martinez to make it 3-1. So the Sox take a 2-run lead early. And then Margevicius' day is over, and he only got 1 out in this game. So are you surprised that the Mariners pulled Margevicius this early? He only got 1 out in the game, and I don't think he's an opener like what the what do you call it? The last team we faced did, the Blue Jays.
Blue
So I'm kind of surprised they pulled him this early because I think he's just a regular starting pitcher. So they just really had no faith in him.
Yeah, me too. I think, especially too, because it wasn't like the Red Sox had put up a ton of runs. I mean, 3 runs, and they already had 1 on the board. They were only up. I think what they pulled him when the Sox were up 3-1, right?
I think that's what I have written down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That feels a little premature because like they already had 1 run on the board, and like when you're up 3-1, like that's not a horrible deficit. It's not like when they pulled Giolito a few games ago in the second. I mean, at that point, the Red Sox had already scored so many runs. It was like, just take him out. Yeah, I thought that was a little bit premature, honestly. They could have played him just a little bit more.
Do you think that the manager was a little worried because the bases were still loaded when they took him out? So do you think he was thinking this would be another Giolito situation where the bases loaded is just going to keep snowballing, adding more runs onto the board? So do you think he just pulled him out to try and stop the bleeding? Because that's what I think maybe the manager was thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That's probably why. Yeah.
But nonetheless, I haven't seen that in a while where pitcher gets pulled out after only getting 1 out in the start. And moving forward, who came in after that? Let me look it up. Steckenrider came in, and he hit Christian Arroyo with a pitch. This one really hurt. It got Arroyo in the hand, and Arroyo's probably, I didn't really think like, oh, it hit him in the hand. Excuse me. It is what it is. Like that happens. People get hit in the areas that they don't like. But I found out a few years ago when he was playing on a different team, Arroyo actually fractured his hand. So he's a little bit sensitive to getting hit there. So he was a bit shaken up on that play. I know Corbin and a trainer came out, but thankfully he was okay and he was able to take his base. And then Bobby Dahlbeck hits a double play to end the inning. So the Red Sox are only able to score 4 runs because I forgot to mention on the Arroyo hit by a pitch, Vasquez got to go home. So it became 4-1. And the Red Sox could have added on more runs, but Dahlbeck grounded into an inning-ending double play. I don't know. I'm still not buying Dahlbeck. Like, this is really disappointing. I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but right. I'm just waiting for him to break out. He only really had that one good game against Minnesota. And I know a lot of other fans are going to disagree with me in saying that he's struggling and been disappointment because he's been getting hits here and there in these games. I get that, like one single here, a double here, but I'm not thrilled with what I've seen from Bobby so far in April, but that could change. It's only the first month of the season. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about? Are you hopping off the Bobby Dahlbeck bandwagon? Or are you still feeling him out?
I just put in my notes that I literally just put will Bobby baseball ever warm up? I mean, I feel like he's just been kind of inconsistent. I mean, I don't think he's struggling as much as Cordero, which I talked about earlier, how I feel like when Franchi stepped up to the plate, it's just he's swinging at everything. I think Bobby is good with hanging in there and like that 13-pitch walk, at bat against the White Sox last weekend. Like he clearly has the IQ. He's not horrible at first. I mean, he's made some mistakes here and there. He's not the best first baseman. But yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you that I definitely think he's been disappointing. But I just still kind of want to give him a little more time.
Absolutely.
We'll see how he does. But yeah, this series was very quiet for him. He didn't really do a whole lot. The last few, he had actually made some decent plays and had a bit more of an impact. But yeah, he just felt very silent. He felt like the 9th man in this series. Like you didn't really hear him for a whole lot. He was just kind of there. So.
Yeah, maybe this is me just buying too much stock in how well he did in the shortened season last year when we finally called him up. But I'm with you. I mean, he plays good enough defense at first. I'm just waiting for that power to show up. Obviously, we waited a while for Bogey to show his power, and he's gone on the tear in the last week or so. I think he has like 4 or 5 homers in the last week. So maybe that'll happen with Bobby at some point too. But it's just a little alarming for someone like him who you think of as a power hitter to have 0 homers at this point in the season. But there's still May, June, July, August, September. There's still at least 5. I can do math, by the way, the viewers. There's still at least 5 months left in the season. So we'll see what Bobby can do. Jumping ahead of the second inning, the Red Sox break it open just a little bit more. Mariners continue to have trouble with walking Red Sox batters as Kike and Devers get on base again due to back-to-back walks. And then Bogaerts, the man I just talked about, hits an RBI double to score Kike to make it 5-1 Boston. Devers had a base running blunder on this play that gets him out, but because of this, Bogey was able to hit a double but also advance a third based on the fact that Devers was able to hold off the defenders so long in that pickle he got himself in. But just another frustrating thing for me, it feels like the Red Sox are just, again, being too careless on the base paths. I know we've talked about this in past podcasts, but I believe, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I believe Devers did ignore Carlos Fables, the third base coach's directions to stay on third, and he tried to score. And obviously that screwed Raphael and got him in the pickle and turned into an out. But It's just really angering how these base running blunders continue.
Right. Yeah, that Devers error was definitely a point of note for me and kind of a point of frustration too. It just looked very foolish, very immature. I don't know why he didn't listen to the third base coach and do what he was supposed to. I know, Devers has made a lot of mistakes before, but it's just tough to defend every single little mistake, when they add up. And again, I think he's been, even defensively, been a lot better the last few weeks, but base running errors like that and they cost the team. And even though they were up at that point, it's just, you got to be more attentive and you got to listen to the coaches. I mean, that's like kind of just, it's what you do in the game.
Right. It's baseball common sense, and every run matters at the end of the day. And to everyone watching, we're not just pinning this on Devers, even though he screwed up here. The Red Sox all year, no matter who it be. I remember Marwin Gonzalez got into a pickle once. It's on all of them, and I hope Cora is preaching this to them throughout the practices every day or in clubhouse meetings, but we just got to be smarter on the base paths, because in these games, like in Game 3, where we just really struggled to do anything offensively, if that base running blunder happens yesterday in that game, it's not good, because it screws us and it ruins any momentum we could have had in the game where throughout the whole game yesterday, we couldn't get anything going. So I think they're underestimating the power of momentum and just staying disciplined on the base paths and how that can contribute to the scoreboard. So they just got to get that fixed by the beginning of May. I mean, we can't just have this continuing to be a problem, 2-3 months into the season. But in the top of the third inning, Kike Hernandez playing center field. This has become a theme of this series where Red Sox outfielders are making nice plays, primarily Verdugo up until this point. But Kike Hernandez was in center today, and he made a nice shoestring catch to end the third inning, if you want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, Kike he did what he needed to do. He got in the right spot, made the nice catch, and like you said, took the helm of outfielding responsibility. And we've seen Renfroe make some decent catches, and obviously Verdugo's been a highlight defensively for this team. So yeah, it's good to see Kike step up there. I personally am really starting to appreciate Kike on both ends. So yeah, it's good to see him make plays like that. I'm glad him and Renfroe are kind of starting to come into their own and getting more adjusted to playing at Fenway, because I know it can be difficult. I know in particular when it's super sunny out. Today it wasn't as sunny, but particular days when they're playing around 1 o'clock and the sun's right in their eyes out there, it's good that they're starting to get used to the swing of things. So I hope Kike continues to make good plays like that and do his thing. So
yeah, and he was actually supposed to play at second today. I don't know if you heard about that, but Verdugo was a late scratch for whatever reason. So then Cora told him probably right before the game, you're playing in center, which, Kike's played that position for us a few times this year and is very versatile. But I just thought this was very hilarious how it was a simple fly ball, but Kike ran all the way back to nearly the triangle in center, and then he backpedaled and barely made the catch. So he ran around pretty much 100 feet just to make a simple catch. But nonetheless, just a nice play, and it's just nice to see these versatile players, manning the field at Fenway, which is, again, as we've said, no easy task. And then in the fifth, there was a little trouble for Eduardo Rodriguez. Haggerty gets an infield single as Marvin Gonzalez, who's playing short today. I believe Bogarts is actually the DH, and so they were giving him the day off in the field. But Marlin makes a nice diving play, but the throw is off as Bobby Dahlback can't corral it, so Haggerty reaches base. And then Murphy doubles down the left field line to score Haggerty all the way from first to make it 5-2 Boston. And then J.P. Crawford doubles past the reach of Bobby Dahlback at first. They were saying on the broadcast where Bobby knew that the pitch was a changeup, they would have had him play closer to the first base line, that foul line. So if that was the case, he would have been able to make that play. But nonetheless, it goes past Bobby and brings in Murphy to make it 5-3 Red Sox. And then in the eighth inning, for the final time in this series and for the third time in the series, Adam Ottavino comes in. And how did his inning go this time, Ricky?
I'm trying to remember. It was okay today, right?
He did good today, actually. Obviously the first game is atrocious. Second game, a little bit better. Today, he really put it all together. I don't think he gave up a single hit. So it seems, he's hot and cold so far this year. He's had the bad outings, but he's also had some good outings. It seems as if up until this point, if we haven't already realized it, both of us, that he's the setup man for the Red Sox this season. So we'll have him in the eighth and then Barnes in the ninth. Do you feel comfortable with that combination where we have a situation where the starter goes 5 innings, and in my opinion, it would go out of the bullpen in an ideal situation, Sawamura, Ottavino, and then Barnes to close it out. Do you like that lineup?
Yeah, that's not bad. I like Sawamura a lot. I think he's been pretty solid. Potentially throw Whitlock in there maybe too as one of those.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean Ottavino as the closer is a little bit concerning, but I think throwing him in the 7th or 8th is more ideal. I'm still not completely sold on him yet. I know we've touched on him a lot, been rather critical, but yeah, I think for the time being, Matt Barnes is probably going to stay. And I think if you keep Matt Barnes in the 9th or even 2, maybe put Ottavino in the 7th and Sawamura in the 8th if Ottavino really struggles. But I think for now, just leave him in as like an 8th inning guy. And if you have a really comfortable lead, you could just put him as the closer. But it really depends, honestly. If you're in a tighter situation, I'd go with someone like Matt Barnes.
I agree. We don't have that many options for closer, and I feel like Barnes just fits that role. He's done really good up until this point. Obviously, he had the shaky outing in Game 2 of this series, but he's been lights out. This is the best year of his career so far. And Ottavino, like the rest of the team, we're just asking for more consistency from him because I feel like one night we're like his biggest fans, and the next night we're his biggest critics. So again, though, he could be our best option as a setup. So I'm willing to keep throwing him in the 8th, or even what you said in the 7th, because throwing him in an even later inning in the 8th could be potentially deadly if he's not in his A game. So We'll see how that goes the rest of the year. But then Matt Barnes comes in the 9th inning, closes things out per usual for the Red Sox, and the Red Sox win 5-3 today, and they get the series split. So before we get into our players of the series, I actually wanted to talk to you about the umpires that officiated the series. Now, this isn't going to be ripping them, but it's something I noticed. I'm not sure if you noticed, but throughout all the games, the strike zone for both pitchers, whether it was on the Red Sox and the Mariners, was pretty expanded, where a lot of pitches that are usually called balls, these umpires, whoever they were, I don't know their names, were consistently calling them strikes. So it's somewhat of an expanded strike zone. How do you feel about that? Because a lot of people, the main thing, as someone who was an umpire, sometimes they want you to expand the strike zone to keep the game going and keep the flow of the game moving so it goes by a little bit faster. But you're kind of screwing the pitchers or the hitters when you do that because you're not giving them as much freedom. You're kind of restricting them.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Do you like this whole expanded strike zone thing?
I get it for the purpose you mentioned of potentially speeding play up or whatnot, but I don't think it's honestly entirely fair. In some instances, because it really does, like you said, restrict what batters can do. And I think it can be really frustrating, even on pitchers because it almost is like a false read on things. Like it'll get called a strike when in reality it would have been a ball. So it's honestly not even entirely accurate in some ways. So I don't know. I'm not a fan.
I agree with you. Like, granted, I was an umpire at the Little League level for all the viewers watching, so it's a little bit different when you're expanding the strike zone at Little League because
Right.
people really don't care. Most of the dads there who are coaches just really want to get the games over with as soon as possible, so they can go home and have some waters. Those nice beverages, those waters, nothing else. But at the major league level, I agree with you. It doesn't make too much sense because no one knows. That's the other thing. The whole expanded strike zone, no one knows how far that goes. Like one pitch can be called a ball, and a pitch around the same location can be called a strike, which isn't, as you said, fair to the hitter. So
Right.
I don't really like that. But again, the MLB is all about speeding up the game to appeal to millennial viewers. It's all about marketing. They're trying to get more people to watch these games. But nonetheless, that was just really the only gripe I had this series or something I found interesting. So now we'll get into our players of the series. Who do you have for the Red Sox?
For the Red Sox, I just have Bogarts and Marwin Gonzalez just as my two. Xander had some nice offense. We've touched upon how in the last couple weeks he's really been heating up. That continued. He had a couple nice defensive plays too. You mentioned one of them earlier. And Marwin Gonzalez is a guy that I think is really starting to come into his own. He's good with getting on base and getting RBIs and whatnot. I'm really starting to like him. At first, I was almost considering him in that Cordero Dahlback category where, this guy might strike out. But he's doing a solid job hanging in there, and I'm really starting to appreciate Marwin. And then obviously for pitchers, I had Erod for my starter pick because he pitched pretty well. Pretty much what you'd want. It's just good to, again, like I said last podcast, it's good to see him back. And then for relievers, I had Sawamura just because, again, like you mentioned too, he's not bad. I think he's definitely one of their better bullpen acquisitions. I like him so far. So yeah, that's who I have.
Sure. So for the Red Sox, I had Xander Bogaerts for my number one star. He had a hit in all 4 games of the series, at least one hit. He obviously had a homer, and then he drove in some runs, which is nice. He's just really getting it all together at the plate. We both weren't saying he wasn't doing that at the beginning of the year, but it's nice to see him not only hit the ball for contact, but to hit the ball for power, which is what he's done lately. And then for an honorable mention, I had Verdugo. Couple nice defensive plays in the series with the sliding catch in the first game. And then the third game, he played the ball off the green monster well to Nav Seeger at third, as I mentioned earlier. And then the second game, he had 3 hits at the plate, and he had a 2-hit game, I believe, yesterday. So just good to see for him continuing to play well in a Red Sox uniform. And then for the pitcher, I had Nick Pivetta. Obviously, his outing didn't end as it wanted to, but that was a little bit of Cordero's fault for playing that ball not the right way and left. But he went into the 6th inning of a start with a no-hitter, and he only gave up 2 runs. So pretty good start for him, and he's had a really good Red Sox career so far since we traded for him late last season. Who'd you have for Seattle?
So for Seattle, my 2 players I picked were obviously Seager. I think he had a really excellent series. Almost hit a cycle. That's insane. He was just all over the place offensively. And I also had Ty France. I think he hit really well. I believe he had a 3-hit game on Friday or Saturday. One of the games he had a 3-hit game, but he either way, this entire series he was hitting really well, which was definitely beneficial to Seattle. So, yeah. And then for pitching, I had I forget his name. The
Flexen?
Yeah, Flexen. I also had Dunn listed just because I like seeing younger guys, and shout out Boston College, always respect the locals. I believe he was born and raised in Connecticut as well, so pretty close to where we are. So shout out to him as well. I believe that was his first start of the no. So
One of his, I know he hasn't made too many starts because he's still a young guy.
Yeah, one of his first starts of this year, I believe. But he had a pretty solid game too. But Flexen obviously was lights out. He pitched a very solid game, and that was that really for them. So I think both of them were pretty good. So
Yeah, and for Seattle, I had Steger as well. He really turned it up in the second half of the series. I think he had a 4 RBI game and a 3 RBI game, so really impressive. And then for honorable mentions, I had Haggerty. He seems like he got some timely hits and he was everywhere. Ty France, I also had for the same reasons as you. He put together a good series at the plate. JP Crawford also, came in clutch with some bunts and some singles. Remember him playing way back when on the Giants, and can't believe he's still in the league, but he's still a serviceable player. And for my pitcher, for the same reasons as you, Flexen, just had a really dominant outing in Game 3, held us to 1 run, our powerhouse of an offense to 1 run and 7 innings work. So
right.
He really dominated us. So yeah, those are both of our players of the series. Red Sox and Seattle Mariners once again split the 4-game set. 2 games to the Sox, 2 games to the Mariners. Before we go, let's preview the next series versus the New York Mets. It's another 2-game set. So how do we think it's going to go? The pitching matchup's going to be for the first game, Garrett Richards versus David Peterson, 2 pitchers who have been atrocious so far this year. And then the second matchup is going to be a better pitching duel, hopefully. It's going to be Nick Pivetta versus Jacob deGrom. So how do you think this series is going to go for the Sox?
Honestly, I think it could go either way, being a split or a sweep. And I really think that depends on Pivetta on the second game and also how the Red Sox hit off of deGrom. That's obviously going to be a tough task. We talked earlier about how they sometimes will struggle against pitchers and just not get things going if they're struggling and it get late into the game and whatnot. And I think Pivetta as well. He pitched pretty well, even though they lost, as you mentioned. He definitely was actually really solid the other day. So it depends on how he does as well. If he can give the Red Sox, breathing room, if he can get strikeouts, if he can do what he needs to do. And I think for the first game, it could really go either way. I think either pitcher, because they're both pitching horribly thus far, it really could go either way. I think it could be a blowout. We could see a Garrett Richards win, honestly. Who knows? But
imagine if he throws a no-hitter.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it really could go both ways. I know the Mets have some really good power hitters, obviously, or whatnot, but that'd be crazy. And because the Red Sox have technically not lost a series since that Orioles sweep, they've pretty much split their last few series, which is honestly kind of understandable, seeing as 2 of them were 4-game sets. The other one was a 2. And they were against good teams, and that's the same as the Mets. Mets are a good team. It's a 2-game. I see a split again, but honestly, I don't know which game they'll win because, like I said, I feel like you could get a really good game where the Red Sox pull like a potential Giolito situation where they batter the ace, or you could actually somehow pull off a win with Garrett Richards because the other pitcher is on the opposing team is equally as bad. So I don't know what you think, but I think it could go either way, but it'll be a sweep. Not sweep, split.
I'll say it's a split too. I think we're going to win Game 1. I think Game 1's going to be like a slugfest. Honestly, I feel like the Sox going to win like 14-10 or something like that crazy. Yeah. This pitching matchup is not one you want to look forward to. Garrett Richards 0-2, 6.48 ERA. David Peterson 1-2, 6.75 ERA. So if the Red Sox can really just blow it open early, I feel confident that Garrett Richards can give up. If he gives up a ton of runs, as long as we keep having a lead in this game, the bullpen can take over at any point and really help us out. So I think we're going to win Game 1. And then I know you just touched upon, and we talked about how the Red Sox were able to get to these teams' aces and Ryu for the Jays and Giolito for the White Sox. But even though history would say we're going to destroy deGrom or get to him, I just don't think that's the case. I mean, deGrom has a .31 ERA, 50 strikeouts already on the year. Pivetta is going to have to pitch really well, as you said. That's going to be a huge X factor. We need him to put together another good outing if we want to keep track in this game. So I think we'll win Game 1 and lose Game 2. I think it's a safe bet to have a split. Yeah, I'm so mad. We're only facing the Mets for 2 games, and of course we have to run into DeGrom, but it's what it is. So that's going to do it for this recap. Hope you all enjoyed. Sox are now 14-9, I believe. Is that their record?
Yeah.
Yep. So 5 more days left in April. We'll see how the rest of the month goes, but nonetheless, the Sox continue to get off to a good start this season. And hopefully people are keeping an eye on them. I mean, we've said we don't think they're World Series contenders. They may not end up making the playoffs, but this is encouraging so far to watch this season if you're a fan of the Red Sox. So that's going to do it for this recap. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, absorb that subscribe button. We will be having Celtics, Bruins recaps coming soon. I'm hoping to do them when there's like 5 games left in the season so we can recap that and then go into the playoffs. Maybe do some Patriots stuff about the draft or whatever. We'll see. Just plenty of options with this podcast moving forward. There will also be reality TV show recaps coming in the summer. A lot of things to look forward to on In Depth with David. So Red Sox have an off day tomorrow, then 2 games against the Mets. We will probably be talking to you sometime Thursday. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. Thank you so much, Ricky, for joining me. Take care, everyone. Have a good night. See ya.